Hello and welcome to week 6 of our class. This week we're just going to hit the very basic areas of web navigation, just some basic main ideas. If you need to, rewind and fast forward this video as many times as you need to. And remember to take time off to practice. Also remember our 20-minute rule. Only spend about 20 minutes, and when you get frustrated, take some time, walk away, and then come back to it. So let's get started. Sometimes I feel like a fly when I use the web. Okay, so using the internet with a screen reader, like we said, could be pretty darn intimidating. And many screen readers users aren't very, what I would call, savvy about it. Um, they think using the tab and the down arrow will get them to where they want to go. And although that's true, there are many more efficient ways to surf the internet. Using the down arrow will get you where you want to go, and the keyword is eventually. But if you're looking for something that you know is going to be closer to the bottom of the screen, either through experience or because you have heard so from someone who has used the site, then there are much easier ways to navigate than just using up and down arrows. Just a note, the internet's one of the areas that JAWS and NVDA diverge in some places, but they're the same in others. At the top of each slide, the title will contain the name of the screen reader to which the information pertains. Browsers. Yes, it does matter. So the first browser we're going to look at is Chrome. Chrome is quite compatible with JAWS. It works quite well, and generally there are no issues. It is also compatible with NVDA, although I believe it is less so. This, again, may change with updates to either Chrome or NVDA. Firefox. It is mostly compatible with JAWS, where a few weeks ago it was not at all. So that's a good improvement. It must have been the latest release of Firefox that did it. Firefox is extremely compatible with NVDA. Microsoft Edge. Don't use Microsoft Edge, just don't do it. It's not compatible with anything, and if you have Microsoft Edge as your default program to read PDFs, it won't read those either. So, no to Microsoft Edge. Internet Explorer, yes, it has compatibility with both screen readers. However, Internet Explorer has some major issues with it as far as security goes. They will not be updating Internet Explorer on a regular basis in the future. They're hoping you'll switch over to the current version of the web browser that Microsoft puts out eventually. So they're kind of discontinuing support of Internet Explorer. So please, please do not use it. Please note that when the browsers are updated, and they are updated quite a bit, things often change. They're updated more often than the screen readers are for the most part. So what works in one version may not always work in another version. Between when this packet was produced and when the presentation was delivered, there may be changes that make the browser and screen reader compatibility information on the previous slide incorrect. So it's really a trial and error process for the most part. I recommend having both Firefox and Chrome installed on your computer. There's some general navigation and Windows commands that work across screen readers and browsers, and these are the main ones. Going to the address bar is usually performed with a Control L. It can also be done in some browsers with an Alt D. So Control L or Alt D. Control L also always works, so I usually tend to stick with that, but I like to give a backup. You can open the Downloads page, usually in a new tab, using the Control plus the letter J. You can open a new tab in your browser using Control plus T. You would cycle through open tabs that are in your browser with a Control tab. If you want to close a current tab, you can do so with Control and F4. instead of Alt F4, which we all know closes a program. Control F4 closes the tab, or in the case of other programs, the document that is open. You can open the bookmarks menu with an Alt plus the letter B. In that bookmarks menu, there are various options such as adding a bookmark, deleting bookmark, or organizing a bookmark. That's a whole nother presentation, to be honest with you. Navigation on the web. So you're going to hear a lot about elements on the web, especially when it comes to NVDA. An element is any navigable item, object, or text that is on a web page. So examples would be things like headings, links, buttons, combo boxes or edit boxes, form fields, anything like that. Graphics is actually a navigable item. And you'll see various examples throughout this presentation. Um, you know that all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs? Well, a good example of that is all headings are elements, but not all elements are headings. And the same can be applied to each one of these. Let's just talk a minute about headings. In both JAWS and NVDA, headings are navigated by using the letter H. Just like we talked about in Word in the previous presentation, headings are multi-leveled. They're much like a textbook is organized, with the headings at the higher level, like heading 1, being the most general, and those at the lower level, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 6, being much more specific. Headings can be navigated by the number, such as headings at level 1 can always be navigated by typing just the number 1. This can be useful if you're trying to skim for a particular topic. So remember, headings at the level 1 are the most generic, and at level 6, as far as level 6, the most specific. I'll give you an example. If your student likes to use the BARD website to download books from the National Library Service, the headings for audiobooks and Braille books are usually either at heading 1 or 2, and the specific titles are on heading level 4. So you can navigate the titles by just pressing the number 4. If you want to get past all the audiobooks and down to Braille, you can do a 2 or a 1, depending on which page you're on, and that will take you to the next heading at that level and skip all of the audiobooks at level 4. When navigating headings might be useful. Well, news sites are usually a good one. So if you go to CNN.com or your choice of news site, you can usually navigate with an H to find each story. Often the sections are done in headings, so things like sports, entertainment, world news, things like that will be at a higher level navigable heading than the specific stories. Shopping, you can navigate by department. Those are usually at the level 1 headings or level 2, and specific things are usually more towards the bottom. We talked about BARD, navigating by book title, and there's also more different ones. Pretty much any website will have some sort of heading. There are single letter navigation commands, and I've listed all of them that JAWS has, but what I'm going to do is just point out some of the more common ones, and I'm going to do it alphabetically. So the letter B, you can navigate to button. Buttons are things that you would normally press and visually look usually like either circles or rectangles on the page. They can be navigated by using the letter B. Often they're things like a search button or a submit button, things like that. Let's try edit box is a good one too. So if you're on a web page and you want to do a search for something, you can use E for edit box to get to the next edit box. Now you may or may not, depending on how your JAWS is set up or your NVDA is set up, be entered into forms mode, when we will talk about that a little later. We've talked about navigating by heading. Another JAWS command is if you do the letter I, it navigates by list item. So if you need to go to the next item in a list, you can do that, which is also related to the letter L, which is list. So a lot of pages have more than one list, especially if they are things like news sites or shopping areas or things like that. They will have various lists and they will have items in those lists. So you would navigate using the L to the different list, and among the list, either the down and up arrows, which is what I tend to do, or you can use the I for a list item. Frame is a little bit tricky sometimes. When developers create websites, they create them in frames, and sometimes it's not as true as it used to be, but they used to have advertisements in a different frame than the content of a website. So a lot of times when I find that I have difficulty getting to the main content and heading doesn't work, I will try to navigate by frame. That sometimes works and sometimes does not. The letter N is, to me, magical. If I want to navigate on a web page to the next non-linked text, like the meat of a story on a news site. I know I use news sites a lot, but that's because I like to use those to introduce students to using the web, because there's pretty much any kind of item on there that can be used to navigate. So if you want to get to the meat of the story and you want to get past all of the advertisements and all of the headings and all that stuff, and you've already clicked into the story, you can use the letter N to get to the first paragraph of the story. And usually it only takes maybe one or two. And then you can start reading the text with either insert down arrow to read everything without having to worry about where you are, or you can navigate line by line if you're more comfortable with that. Probably the next one that I would go with is the letter T for table. This is very helpful when you are navigating an area that has various tables. And we've talked about tables in other contexts. If the table is a non-uniform table, JAWS will tell you, and as we might remember, a non-uniform table is a table that does not have the same number of headings or of columns as it does rows, or consistently throughout the table. You can navigate to the next visited or unvisited link, U for the next unvisited link, or V for the next visited link. If you navigate to a particular site often and you always visit the same link, you can definitely just press V and it will take you to that visited link that you always go to. Just a relatable thing. It's kind of like if you are a sighted person and you're scanning the page for that differently colored text that shows that you visited that link before. It's like that. Probably the next most common thing is, we talked about this, numbers 1 through 6 move to corresponding heading numbers. NVDA is just a little different. And some of these differences are what I would call very, very minimal. Other ones are pretty significant. So let's just go through and just look at some of them that are different. In NVDA, A is for annotation or comment, editor revision, and something like that. But for JAWS, it's by radio button. Very few people navigate by radio button unless you know there's a radio button there. So that's not a major one. The letter D is actually kind of a bigger one. On JAWS, it's for a different element. You can use D in NVDA to navigate by landmark. The next major one that's pretty different, and this actually is kind of a big one, is the letter K. In JAWS, goes by place marker, and as we said, we'll talk about that next time. But in NVDA, K goes by link. In JAWS, you're going to use the tab to go link by link, not the letter K. That's one of the major ones. The letter O, which is, again, not a major one, in JAWS, it's the separator, but in NVDA, it's the embedded object. Q is one that's different, and we really don't use that one very much. S is different as well. In NVDA, S goes to the next separator. Some websites or other HTML content have separators in them as a way of helping people who are visual to separate areas of a page. So that's one way to navigate them. The other major difference is in JAWS, the letter W goes by word from a list. In NVDA, it navigates to the next spelling error. That is more of a thing if you're using browse mode in an editable document such as a Word document, and not so much on the web, because really there's not a whole lot of spelling stuff on the web like that you're going to be able to correct in HTML content. And the headings at levels 1 through 6 are also the same. But I know you're kind of probably going to get hung up on the differences, so let's talk about things that are the same. H is always heading, no matter which screen reader you're using. B is always button, no matter which screen reader you're using. Those are some of the more common ones that you navigate by, so that's actually good news. E is edit field or edit form. It's the same basic idea, but yes, wherever you can edit in a field or form. L is the same as well. It's the lists or lists items, things like that. The letter T for table is also the same in both, as are the visited and unvisited links. You'll also notice that NVDA is missing some letters that JAWS has assigned to it, and they're really not major navigable items, to be honest. It's not such a big deal. I know this was a lot of content, so and because it's very not intuitive. It's not very intuitive at all. So if you need more time, I would suggest practicing just on this little bit. In the next section, we're going to look at some more specific ways to navigate by element or by content. So practice these ways just for this week and see if you can't work a lesson in with a student. Or better yet, have the student teach you, because trust me, they know more than we do often. So yeah. I hope this lesson has been helpful for you. Please remember to take time to practice, and like I said before, the 20-minute rule is a really good one to follow. Best of luck.